Hello, Tim here. Welcome to my channel. So in today's episode, I'm going to show you my family of glue that I use, all the different types, and we'll talk about why are there so many options, which one is the best one, and if I was to choose just one glue over all these, and there's many more than what I have displayed here, which one would that be? And the one thing that all these glues have in common is they're all glues that I use in my woodworking. So to start out with, I'm going to explain each individual glue, why I have it, and what I use it for. We'll start out with this grouping of type bond products, and the basic glue, the basic go-to glue for everybody is white glue. This is your Elmer's glue, and this would be for projects. I've been using Elmer's glue since grade school for different projects, and I do keep one of these in my tool bag just because it's cheap. If it gets frozen or something like that, it becomes useless, and I can just get another one. So it's not that expensive. It's not my favorite glue, however. My main glue is the tall one here. This is the original type bond. I've been using this for over 50 years. And I use this for 80% or more of my work. So this is my go-to glue. And I've bought this in, if I'm doing a lot of gluing, I've bought this in a 5-gallon pail before. But I don't go through it fast enough anymore to justify that. So these glues have, all of these glues here, except for one, have a shelf life. When I buy some of these glues, I'll sometimes write a date on it so I know how old it is. This is my go-to all-around, all-purpose glue, and I like the way it sands. I like the way I can scrape it off. I'm just most familiar with this glue. Now, a hybrid of the Type Bond original is the Type Bond 2, which came out a number of years ago as well. This has got some interesting properties. This one is only for interior use. This one you can use outside. It's interior and exterior. It says water resistant. So you can make things like outdoor projects, birdhouse, or something that's going to be out in the patio or something like that. But it's not for underwater. You couldn't use this to hold something that contained water. The interesting thing about this glue, years ago, I worked in a shop where they used this for gluing up panels, big like butcher block panels or door panels or something like that. And this glue, among other types, but this one here is what we used with a radio frequency gun, and it's kind of a U-shaped tool that would straddle the glue joint, and then you pull the trigger and it shoots electricity in there and heats it up, and just like right now it just pops and it's dry. So you could glue up a big panel, and like if you're doing butcher block, for example, you could just boom 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 all through the panel, and within a matter of seconds, a minute or so, you can take it out of the clamps and put the next group in there or whatever you're going to do. So we were making raised panel doors, and we would cure the joints on that using this glue. And a friend of mine that does veneer work will glue the veneer and the substrate with this product, and then with heat, like an iron or something like that, he can hot melt that glue down and do veneer work with it. I haven't done that with this, except for the radio frequency, which I don't do now. And this Type Bond 3 behaves a little differently. It gets kind of a little gooey and old, and this works really well for something that's waterproof. So if you want something that's going to be maybe in the ground or holding water or something like that, and it's resistant to ultraviolet, you wouldn't build a boat with it. But this is gap filling too. It kind of turns dark brown. And the reason I use this one the most is it's the most economical. This is more expensive. These are more expensive, but this got its place, and I do use it. The hide glue is your traditional glue that allows a lot of open time. These have, this one has a quick tack, and you don't have a lot of open time. You have a reasonable amount with this. This allows a lot of open time. So if you're doing an assembly, like a complicated chair, and you got joints you're pulling together, this won't tack up as quickly as, say, these others do. And you can, the beauty of hide glue is that it's reversible. It's the only one of these glues that's really reversible. And what that means is that you can take take vinegar and squirt it into the joint and work vinegar into the joint, and it'll come apart. And why would you want to do that? Well, if you're going to take an antique chair apart, you don't want to break fragile wood. You want to be able to pull it apart so it works loose and you can take it apart. Building a violin, for example, sometimes those have to be, the top has to be taken off, or the fingerboard has to come off, or something has to be done to fix it. And this is the only one that's really an organic product. All the rest of them are synthetic. But this is your traditional glue. And in a previous video, which you can check out, I talk about hide glue. This is in the liquid form, and it does have a shelf life. That's the only unfortunate thing about this. This lasts about a year or two, and then it doesn't dry very well after that. This granular hide glue, which I talk about in my other video about hide glue, this you mix it with water and heat it up. And you can use this, the granular, even this here, to do a rub joint. So if I was going to put like glue blocks underneath a tabletop, I don't need to clamp it. I can just rub the joint with hide glue, and there's a suction that'll just hold it in place. This will kind of work to these others, but sometimes you might have to hold it there a little bit longer, or they'll sag and they'll drop away. This, especially the hot hide glue, has kind of a suction to it, and I really like that for that reason. So this is the traditional glue that's been used for centuries. And the other thing about it that I like is that if you're repairing an antique, the old glue you can scrape off and you can reconstitute it with water. So you reactivate it and you freshen it up. So it's like there's no age to it. So you can add the new glue to the old glue, and it'll bond to itself. This is Rue glue. Became familiar with this when I worked for a shop for a while that did a lot of laminate melamine work. So melamine or plastic laminate, but this is glued together with melamine glue. And you could take this and glue it to another block of melamine, or glue it onto, say, this tile. So you can bond dissimilar things. You can bond stone, ceramic, non-porous, vinyl. The only thing is you got to have, you got to tape it down. You have to clamp it for a period of time. And it gets a little gummy on your hands, but it does wash off. It dries clear, and it doesn't smell at all. There's no smell. Matter of fact, none of these glues have much of a smell. Maybe a little bit hide glue. Now we get into some of the smelly glues, which is like E6000. It's very useful for certain things. So if I'm going to glue a grommet or something onto a piece of wood, I could use this product here. Weather stripping, you could bond to wood or metal or plastic. And it's flexible too. So I've repaired shoes with this. So that's very useful. It's a long cure time. That's one of the downsides of it. And it can be kind of expensive. One of the things I try to use that E6000 for is one of my things I make, and I do have a video where I talk about making bud vases. There's an insert in here that's a flat bottom glass tube. But I was going to have these tubes loose like this. You could take them out and clean them. The problem is if you tip it, it's gonna just come right out and break, and that's what's happened. So when I tried E6000, which would hold this very nicely, if I just glued it on top of something, just set it on there, it would hold it nice. But the problem is I put it into a hole like this and it doesn't dry. It doesn't cure. So it needs to have air around it for some reason, or it takes a long time to cure. So I just found this is my newest glue. It's called Tacky Glue. I got it at Hobby Lobby, and it's not that expensive. So I put a little dab on here, drop it in, and within a half hour, it's in there solid. It's not coming out. So that's an important feature for making something like this. I have yet to find other uses for it. So it's mainly for crafts. It says all-purpose adhesive. So if you're into crafting, then these two would probably be pretty good to hang on to. Super glue is very useful for certain things. And some people think, oh, this is the best glue because it bonds everything. It fixes all kinds of stuff. And it was actually designed for medical purposes in the field, in combat, if you got cut or something like that. And I've used it to seal a wound. You got to be careful so you don't stick your fingers to your fingers and all that. But this is good for fixing little knots or pieces of wood where it's cracking. I did that on this coffee cup here where the end grain was cracking, and I used super glue to hold that and check, and it did a good job. So it's kind of a stopgap for a lot of things, but I wouldn't assemble a chair. You certainly wouldn't repair a violin or something with super glue, because then you've ruined it. Buy them in quantities like this. So I don't buy big bottles. You can get them in a big bottle like that, but the problem with that is it gets hard before you're done using it. You waste a lot. So this is pretty cheap. I just picked this up for $2. Once you open it, it may last for a while, but it might get hard too. And sometimes they don't. Cheaper ones may be kind of split and get all over the place. So you gotta be careful with that. This is contact cement, which is what I use for repairing laminate work. Particularly if I'm on a job site and I have to stick a little piece of laminate back down. That's pretty useful. This is about as small a quantity as you can buy, and you can get it up into 5-gallon pails. And I've used that for making countertops and laminate work, which I don't do much of that anymore. But it's useful to have on hand just for small things. Rubber cement. Now I use that a lot for making templates. This is a template for a dog that I'm going to carve. It was printed on green paper, and I glued it onto tag board, poster board, and cut it out so I can use it to cut out my template. This is the side and front. So I use this a lot for gluing down photographs and templates and things. Gorilla Glue. Now Gorilla Glue is probably the most advertised glue out there. And it's got some benefits, and it's waterproof, and I don't really care for it myself. I've used it quite a bit for some exterior woodwork. But the problem with it is that if you get it on your hands, it's hard to get off. You need lacquer thinner. If you get it on your clothes, it won't come out, not very easily. And it seems like it would be a good gap-filling glue, but if your joints aren't tight, it's weak. Actually, it's like foam. It's expanding foam stuff. And although it's hard, it doesn't allow you a lot of open time. It starts to swell up almost immediately. So you got to have your stuff lined up pretty good before you get this stuff going. It does have this. You can use a little bit, and it kind of, you don't have to roll it out. Just kind of expands out. It's kind of interesting that way. And you can bond dissimilar things. So you could stick a tile. I mean, if you're doing that kind of stuff and you do a repair. The problem with it is that you can't really wipe it off like you can with these water-based glues. You can't really wipe it off once it gets on a surface. You have to wait till it dries, and then you have to mechanically sand it off or scrape it off. And it comes off pretty good. It would come off of a shiny surface like that. The one issue I have with it, that's why I have a small container, is that once air gets in there, moisture, it can kind of seize up. It'll harden in there. So I don't know if this is still any good or not. But it's got its place for certain things. You'd never use this on an antique because then you've contaminated that joint, and then you can't repair it properly if it didn't get put together properly, or like you'd never use this on instrument building because you can't, it's not reversible. So that's Gorilla Glue. Although you see it everywhere and they say it's the best glue on earth, and not to me. It's got its place, but probably best for bonding dissimilar things together. So I'm going to finish up with the epoxy, and then I'm going to tell you which one of these is my glue if I only had one glue. Start with the big cans here. This is the West system, and this is epoxy resin, and this is the hardener. And the West system, this is something most people don't need to use this, but if you're going to do exterior woodwork, which I had to do some architectural structural stuff, that's what this is for. So I had to glue up a big beam of porch posts, and the architect called out for a product. I had to give him the spec sheet on it, and he approved this one, whereas another product like this would have worked, but it didn't have the specifications he was looking for as far as strength and longevity. It was designed by Guggen Brothers. They made it for building wooden boats. So if you go to the website and see West System, you'll find that your resin is your basic ingredient, and you adjust it by the different kinds of hardeners. This is the slow hardener, and then there's a fast drying one, and you got to work pretty fast with that. They have different properties, and so it's ratioed out, so it's one pump to one pump. And this is over $100 for a gallon of this. These are probably about 75 now, but it's lasted a long time. Of all these glues, this is the best gap filling glue. And the problem with maybe the slow hardener is that there's a need on a vertical surface if you're going to fill a crack or something on say a restoration project, or you're building a boat, or you're building something that you got a vertical surface. You don't want all that product to run out. And I was repairing a column one time where all the product, I didn't realize it, but it poured into the hole, and I had a big puddle on the floor. So I would use a product, one of the several different fillers. This happens to be their fairing filler. This is 410. They have different grades of them that have more metallic kind of product inside for bonding hardware, laminating. And this stuff is like it's like flour. It's like real fine dust like, and it works really good to thicken this up. So you can make this epoxy like peanut butter, and then you can mix pigment with it to turn it dark, or color. And what I've done with this in the past, when I have to fill a joint or something in a piece of architectural woodwork, something that's rotted out, you can fill in what's missing and use even the fragments of the wood and restore it, and it sands up beautifully, and it's nice to work with, but it's very expensive. So because it's so expensive, and I might not want that much if I'm going to fill a knot hole in something or try to restore some piece of wood, then I would use this 5-minute epoxy. This is the same product as what's in this tube thing here, where you squeeze out 2 little beads at the same time. It's the same. It's 5-minute epoxy. And what I would do with this oftentimes is I would mix a little dry color pigment, and I could match the color of this bench, or I could match the color of walnut or cherry or something like that, or maple, and the defect would just kind of go away. So the epoxy is my go-to for gap filling and not so much rely on clamping, so I could fill the void and have strength. So it adds strength and gap fills. Now, I said at the very beginning which glue would I use if I could only have one glue, and why. And if I could only have one glue of all this assortment, I would go with the traditional hide glue. And I probably would use just the crystals. And the reason why is that I could take this and there's no shelf life to it. And I could just mix it up and I could repair furniture. And another feature with this is I can make I didn't mention this earlier, but you can use this to make a crackle finish on, like if you're going to do something antique. Put your base color on, then put a coat of this on, thinned out, and then put your final color on, and as that paint shrinks, it cracks. And it's kind of a cool effect. I don't do much of that. I don't use this glue that much, but because I'm a traditional woodworker and I've learned how to use it in that setting, and most of my wood that I do is all one-piece woodworking anyway. And if I had to glue something up, I could use this. It's just not good for water holding. My second this is the main one I use, and then the epoxies, and the rest is as needed. So that's my glue story, and I hope something is helpful to you. Good luck on your journey of woodworking and finding what you need to do your project. So if you have a question, leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and give it a thumbs up if you would. And we'll see you next time.